On assignment is later here at 10:45. Now though, with all the latest stories making the headlines this evening, it's the ITV News at 10.
A serious error of judgment. Pressure mounts on NatWests boss Alison Rose over the debanking of Nigel Farage. She herself admitted it after giving misleading information to the BBC about why Mr Farage's account was closed. Tonight, he's furious.
It's extraordinary. She's behaved very badly. Had she been a clerk in a bank that had done that, she'd have been fired immediately. It erodes confidence in London as a business banking centre.
The bank's board say they have full confidence in Dame Alison, but may dock her pay. It's hard to see, though, how that will be the end of it. Joel will bring us the latest, also on News at 10 tonight. As the Greek fires blaze, new analysis saying the human-caused climate crisis is undeniably to blame. Homelessness in England hits an all-time high with over 100,000 children in temporary accommodation. Warming up for Denmark, the Lionesses pledged to up their game after a wobbly start.
Haiti were a fantastic side. Denmark are going to bring something completely different, so we're working hard in training.
And after a generation of struggle, recognition for the teenager whose murder galvanised America's fight for civil rights.
This is an American history story that everyone needs to understand and know.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. It was at a dinner 3 weeks ago that the chief executive of the NatWests Group found herself sitting beside the BBC's business editor. The top business story of the moment was Nigel Farage's claim that he'd been thrown out of the NatWest subsidiary Coutts for his political views. No wonder then that the BBC's Simon Jack took the opportunity to ask NatWest Dame Alison Rose about it. Well, today, Dame Alison finally admitted to a serious error of judgment in the reply she gave in implying that Mr Farage had lost his Coutts account for commercial reasons. Tonight, she got the kind of backing that struggling football managers dread, the full confidence of the board, yet her pay package may be affected. Mr Farage said Dame Alison and other bosses at the bank should go, and the biggest shareholder in NatWest Bank, as Dame Alison well knows, is still the British taxpayer.
The whole system is rotten. British banking's gone rotten.
Debanked, unfairly treated and on the warpath. NatWest and the BBC have apologised to Nigel Farage, but on his show on GB News tonight, he insisted he still has questions he wants answered.
Somebody is lying. In a moment, I'll tell you who I think it is.
Coutts is a private bank for the very wealthy and is owned by the NatWest Group. 3 weeks ago, the BBC reported that Coutts had shut Nigel Farage's accounts because he no longer met its financial requirements and that the decision was commercial. Nigel Farage fought back, insisting the motivation was political. He obtained an internal report which showed his political views were a consideration. Yesterday, the BBC accepted its report was inaccurate and apologised, but its business editor tweeted the story had come from a trusted and senior source. Today, that source revealed themselves. Alison Rose, Chief Executive of the NatWest Group. In a statement this afternoon, she said, "I recognise that in my conversations with Simon Jack of the BBC, I made a serious error of judgment in discussing Mr Farage's relationship with the bank." She added, "I would like to emphasise that in responding to Mr Jack's questions, I did not reveal any personal financial information about Mr Farage. But I recognise that I left Mr Jack with the impression that the decision to close Mr Farage's accounts was solely a commercial one." NatWest chairman said Alison Rose should not have spoken in the way she did and that her bonus this year will reflect that. But Howard Davis described her as an outstanding leader and said the board had full confidence in her. Tonight, though, there are already calls for her to go.
You should think about standing down. It's the only honourable thing to do. Given the breach of confidence that she is, I'm willing to believe it was a mistake, but it was a very bad mistake. And, one of her subordinates did it, she'd sack them, I would think, and she must apply the same rules to herself.
That's a sentiment this man supports. After his show, Nigel Farage called on the government, NatWest's biggest shareholder, to intervene.
It erodes confidence in London as a business banking centre. We, the taxpayer, our taxes went up to bail these so-and-sos out. And on Friday morning, we're going to get the 6-month profits. There's also going to be a presentation to investors, and I hope the British government say no confidence.
Sometimes sorry brings closure. But as far as Nigel Farage is concerned, this isn't over yet.
Joel, I mean, there's so many aspects to this story, but we should focus, presumably, on one element, and that is the shareholders in this. What is the government going to do about it, given that the Treasury, the taxpayers, are the biggest shareholder?
Yeah, the government holds 38% of all the shares in circulation. In theory, Julie, that's a minority stake. In practice, that's an enormous amount of influence. Now, throughout NatWest and previously Royal Bank of Scotland's time, the government position has always been we're an arm-length shareholder. The bank is operationally independent. Who leads it is a matter from the board. And clearly NatWest is hoping that they can tough this out, that Alison Rose can stay in post. But I think the signs are that the shareholder's about to flex its muscle. Andrew Griffiths, we know, has summoned bank bosses. Alison Rose will be meeting him, working at the Treasury. And government sources tonight have told ITV News explicitly that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are not, or have significant concerns about Alison Rose remaining in post. I think the writing's on the wall here.
There are a number of investigations now in train because of this. Just take us through those, what the scope is, the length of them, and ultimately, potentially, what the impact is.
Yeah, Nigel Farage feels there's a clear contradiction between the explanation he's been given by the BBC and the explanation that Alison Rose has offered up. Now, I spoke to him just before we came on air, and he confirmed that he's made a complaint to the Information Commissioner's office. Remember, there are data protection rules for individuals. They're taken incredibly seriously, and that will trigger an investigation. He has not complained to the Financial Services Ombudsman. He's free to do so, but didn't consider it worth his while. I think of greatest importance, NatWest itself has launched an independent investigation, which has been welcomed, note, by the Financial Conduct Authority tonight. If you look at Nigel Farage's Twitter feed, he's sending out the rules, the very strict and binding rules that govern conduct and behaviour of individuals, but also organisations, Julie. And it has welcomed this independent investigation. It does have enforcement investigatory powers. Depending on what the investigation pulls up, it may well decide to pursue them. And if it deems that these rules around integrity, skill, care, diligence, treating customers fairly, proper standards of market conduct have been breached in some way, shape or form, it can fine individuals or organisations. It can also ban them.
OK, it's got a long way to go yet. Thank you very much indeed for all the detail on that, Joel. Thank you. Now, in the desperate efforts to stop the spread of the Greek wildfires, 2 young pilots on a water-bombing plane have been killed. It crashed on the island of Evia after clipping a tree. On the island of Rhodes, the fires are now heading inland. Villages in their path have been evacuated.
The Greek Prime Minister says his country is at war. So far, the enemy's scorched earth policy has turned tens of thousands of acres of roads into a charred skeletal landscape. Flying over countryside that could not be saved, this water bomber was heading to one of several fires that erupted on the island today. It's boiling hot and bone dry, and where there's no intervention, the blazes here are rampant. Having cleared many of the East Coast beach resorts of tourists, the fires are now posing a greater threat inland, where several small villages are in danger of being enveloped by flames. Local people have formed their own rapid response teams. They're trying to stop the fires from reaching their homes. One of the remarkable things about this Greek emergency is just how many days it's been going on for, thanks to the most prolonged heat wave in living memory.
Another thing that sets this year's wildfire season apart is just how much of this country is under threat. Today, fires are burning on Corfu in the northwest and here on Rhodes in the southeast. Virtually all of Greece lies in between, and much of it is at risk.
And the peril in the Mediterranean stretches beyond Greece. The city of Palermo in Sicily appears to be in grave danger tonight. The airport there had to close for a time earlier, unable to operate safely. In Algeria, it's confirmed that more than 34 people have died in fires. The toll includes 10 soldiers involved in rescue efforts. Here in Greece, the emergency services are flat out and exhausted. Water bombers have been flying non-stop and making the lowest possible drops, even when smoke hampers visibility. Today, the crisis claimed its first Greek fatalities. The 2 crew members were killed when this plane crashed after clipping a tree. This has been a test of endurance, but there is a glimmer of hope, with temperatures forecast to go down from Thursday onwards. The dip can't come soon enough. John Irvine, News at 10, Roads.
Well, the intense heatwave in southern Europe that John's been reporting on is, climate scientists believe, very unlikely to have happened without the climate change caused by human activity. Anushka's here to take us through all these latest findings. Anushka.
Leading scientists, including from Imperial College, asked that question. Are these fires and record heat waves definitely linked to climate change? And according to their report today, the answer is very much yes. They conclude it would be virtually impossible to have these extreme heat events in Europe without man-made climate change. They say that impact of burning fossil fuels has meant that these heat waves in Europe have been 2.5 degrees hotter. And if global warming continues on the current trend, will happen every 2 to 5 years.
Because of our burning of fossil fuels, these events are happening now. And as long as we continue to burn fossil fuels, these events will become more and more frequent, more and more common, and also hotter.
Now, some point to the past. Someone said to me, it was very hot in the summer of 1976, and it was 15 consecutive days over 32 degrees. But what the Met Office stress is frequency. This chart looks at the hottest 10 days on record. Actually, 1976 doesn't feature, but 1911 does. It crossed 36 degrees back then. But look where far more of the hottest days are. A couple in the 90s, all the rest in the last 20 years. And it isn't just heat. We're seeing other extreme events. In Milan, giant hailstones and a tornado in mid-July. Now, experts say the link between storms and climate change is less clear, but they would expect them to be more frequent.
When a heat wave happens, it's happening on top of a world that is already warmed due to increased greenhouse gases. So the higher temperatures last for longer and are more intense. For heavy rainfall, storms, intense hailstorms, and so on, they're linked because a warmer atmosphere holds more water, a warmer land surface drives more intense thunderstorms.
Now, politically, the Prime Minister has come under pressure on climate change because of the cost of living. But Downing Street sources said to me today they will not delay plans to ban new sales of petrol and diesel cars in 2030.
OK, Anushka, thank you very much. Now, as many people who needed an X-ray, an MRI or CT scan today know only too well, the radiographers who take them have been on strike in England. They will be again tomorrow. They want more than the 5% pay rise and the one-off bonus they've been offered by the government. That's less than the offer to junior doctors. 37 hospital trusts are being affected. The scale of the problem of people having to live in temporary accommodation is getting worse. The high price of private rentals in England earlier this year, the numbers rose to their highest recorded level. 104,000 households have no home to call their own. That's households, not people. 131,000 of them are children. The homelessness charity Crisis said the statistics show the cost of years of no investment in housing, benefit and a lack of new social housing.
Hello, Fuad.
Hello there.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Welcome, please.
So this is the house. Fuad lost his home when a cancer diagnosis forced him out of his job as a computer engineer. With his wife and 5 children, he's now in a 3-bedroom house which backs onto a factory. And when the back door is open, they get fumes in the house.
We can't let the kids play here. As you could see, this space is very small, narrow, and there's so many hazards on in here.
The family have been in temporary accommodation for 6 grueling years.
We have to go through so many issues along the way: bed bugs, damp, rat infestations, being without central heating in the winter for 5 weeks, to just feel. Yeah, you feel like you are not a human being.
Fuad, who is still recovering from illness, is now under pressure to move again. The government says it has built more than 600,000 affordable homes since 2010. And speaking before today's figures were released, the Housing Secretary said they would meet their overall house building targets.
In the last year, we built more homes than for 3 decades. We're going to hit our 1 million homes completed during this Parliament target, and we are making sure that in the future we have a long-term plan for housing that concentrates on delivering houses where it makes the most economic and environmental sense, and that means in particular concentrating on our cities.
But today's figures show that between January and March, more than 104,000 households were in temporary accommodation. That's up 10% since last year. Those households included 131,000 children, also up 10%. And the biggest single cause affecting 38% of households needing help is the loss of private rented accommodation. A government bill is supposed to make evictions more difficult.
The government needs to continue its work on the Renters Reform Bill in Parliament as soon as possible, and that's because we're seeing more people evicted into homelessness than we've ever seen from the private rented sector. And secondly, the government has got to build social homes. It's fine talking about building homes, but only social homes are going to solve this emergency.
Last month, Prince William launched a campaign to end homelessness within 5 years.
This will inspire belief throughout the UK and beyond that homelessness can be ended for good.
But it's a big problem, and he's starting at a time when it is getting worse. Carl Dinnan, News at 10.
Now, if the economy were doing better, there might be more money for social housing. But today, those international arbiters of national economies, the IMF, have put ours second bottom in a league table of growth among the big 7. Germany's is actually at the bottom. The International Monetary Fund says UK growth will be only 0.4% during 2023. It does say, though, Brexit uncertainty in the economy has ended. 6 of the surviving terrorists behind Belgium's deadliest peacetime attack were convicted this evening over the murders of 32 people in 2016. 2 bombs went off in Brussels, one at the airport, the other at a busy underground station as part of a wave of attacks linked to the Islamic State group. 2 other defendants were convicted of being part of a terrorist group. Britain has made its feelings clear about the vote by the Israeli parliament to limit the power of the country's highest court. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan was approved last night. Riots soon broke out in protests across Jerusalem. Today, the Foreign Office said it was urging the Israeli government to build consensus and avoid division. One of the rising stars of China's Communist Party has been replaced as the holder of the prestigious global position of Foreign Minister. Qin Gang hadn't been seen in public for a month, supposedly for health reasons. Needless to say, there has been no official explanation for his removal, whether it was the result of a power struggle or other personal problems. The international concern at recent Chinese foreign policy may have been a factor. Now, it is just over a year since a terrible crush in a pub in the South African city of East London ended with 21 deaths. The victims were all teenagers celebrating the end of exams. The agony felt by their parents and families has been made more acute because all this time later they still don't know how they died. Post-mortems and coroner's reports have been kept secret.
For some of the youngsters at this party last year, they were celebrating not just the end of their exams, but the start of something else, something bigger.
We were excited to see so many people because people came from places, far places.
This would be an unforgettable night indeed. Zingy watched as children began collapsing all around her.
We tried to ask the bouncer to please let us out because we were suffocating inside. We couldn't breathe. Kids started falling. And the bouncer saw the kids were falling, like we were screaming that we were falling, asking him to please open the door. You just watched your friend die next to you.
At first, parents of the victims were told their children had died from asphyxiation. But then came competing claims of a gas leak, of a stampede, of poisoning from counterfeit alcohol. 21 children were killed, the eldest aged 17, the youngest 13, and yet somehow no one can say how. 13 months on, since Nellie lost her daughter, killed that night at the Enyobeni Tavern.
She's my child, she's my friend. She's everything about me, but now I'm lonely. It's because of Enyobeni. It's not easy for me.
Only one charge has been brought against the owners of the tavern, and specifically for the sale of alcohol to children. This way? The place has been closed down, so we were surprised to see the owners there too.
In court, if you see the parents and everybody in court looks at me as a murderer, they are saying it publicly, so I can hear.
And are they right or are they wrong?
They're wrong. I did not kill anybody. And I am not responsible for the death of anyone.
They defended their actions that night and said the children must have been drinking somewhere else. But these are kids, right? I mean, these were small kids.
They were small kids.
And they forced their way past bouncers, plural.
There was a lot of them. And others were climbing. So I'm not sure what transpired, what actually happened at the gate.
How can it be that still no one seems sure about what happened? A lack of urgency is a well-known characteristic of South Africa's legal system. But in this unequal society, even justice comes with haves and have-nots. The simplest explanation for the lack of an explanation is the most painful too. That even after a tragedy like this, the people of the townships are no one's priority. Rohit Kachru, News at 10, in the Eastern Cape.
And Rohit's full report is coming up in On Assignment. That's with Raggy after the news and on ITVX. A new cancer drug could offer hope to patients who don't respond to existing treatment. A medical trial on patients with ovarian cancer has reported some success by shrinking tumours. Scientists believe the drug could pave the way for a completely new type of immunotherapy. Wembley Stadium is to beef up its security in response to the chaos of ticketless fans forcing their way into the Euro 2020 final between England and Italy. Hundreds got inside, you may remember, as stewards were overrun. The new measures will include a 3.5-metre perimeter fence around the stadium. Now, far from Wembley, on the other side of the world, England's Lionesses know they really have to up their game in the Women's World Cup after their underwhelming 1-0 win against Haiti. They admitted as much today to ITV Sport as they prepare to take on Denmark on Friday morning.
At their new training base, the Lionesses were treated to one of the world's oldest ceremonies, an ancient welcome protecting guests physically and spiritually, practiced for centuries by the Darkingjung community. Also there, 2,500 fans watching Serena Wiegmann put her squad through their paces. England have one less than convincing win under their belt, so there is plenty of work to do beneath Australia's winter sun.
I think there was a few lessons learned. We obviously knew that they were going to be a tough team, that you can't underestimate any team in this tournament. It's the World Cup and everyone has bags of talent. I think we learned that the main thing is that we got the win. We started the tournament off with a win, which is massive and can only help us going forward.
Georgia Stanway's retaken penalty was just enough to squeeze past unfancied Haiti in England's opener.
It is World Cup liftoff.
The Lionesses have Mary Earps to thank for their winning start.
What a save by Mary Earps.
If her form continues, Nike will surely regret not selling replica shirts of England's star stopper.
It's ended up in the net.
Next up, it's Denmark, who needed a late winner themselves to get their World Cup off on the right foot against China.
Haiti were a fantastic side. Denmark are going to bring something completely different. So, yeah, we're looking at them. We know what they're going to bring, and we're working hard in training.
For now, the centre of attention, another 3 points this week, will help build some much-needed momentum and at the same time settle a few nerves at home. Steve Scott, News at 10.
In the history of America's civil rights movement, the lynching and murder of a 14-year-old black teenager, Emmett Till, has long been recognised as a pivotal moment, but there has been no national monument honouring him until now. On what would have been Emmett Till's 82nd birthday, President Biden has announced memorials to him and to his mother. She wanted the world to know how badly, as we are about to see, he had been tortured and beaten by two white men. The president signed the proclamation this evening, saying only with truth comes healing, justice, repair, and another step forward toward forming a more perfect union. We've got a hell of a long way to go, he said.
His murder was one of the most painful chapters in the history of America's civil rights struggle. Emmett Till was just 14 when he was lynched in Mississippi in 1955. His mutilated body displayed in an open casket at the insistence of his mother, who wanted the world to see how viciously he'd been beaten.
I believe that the whole United States is mourning with me, and if the death of my son can mean something to the other unfortunate people all over the world, then for him to have died a hero would mean more to me than for him just to have died.
Today, his relatives met President Biden to designate sites associated with Emmett's death as national monuments.
The Till family, to all of you here today, I thank you for your courage, for never giving up, never giving up.
This is important because the highest level of our government has recognized the importance of Emmett's story, the importance of the sacrifice of his mother, and that these sites will be protected, and that this is an American history story that everyone needs to understand and know.
One location is the church where his funeral drew thousands of mourners in Chicago. Another is the courthouse in Mississippi where the murder trial took place. Here, the two men accused of torturing and shooting Emmett were acquitted by the all-white jury after just 67 minutes of deliberation. Knowing they couldn't face a retrial, the men later confessed to the murder. Their motive? They claim the boy had wolf-whistled and talked disrespectfully to one of their wives. His story was powerfully retold in the Hollywood film Till.
Can I at least just fix him up a bit?
No, they have to see it for themselves.
The case outraged 1950s America, giving courage to other civil rights activists like Rosa Parks to speak out against racism. The issues of racism and injustice which the film explores aren't just part of America's troubled past. For many, they are still a corrosive force of America's present.
As we erect monuments, as we recognize some of the sacrifices and the stories of those that have lost their lives, we need to then look at how we not repeat some of the same tragedies.
Now, what would have been Emmett Till's 82nd birthday, the legacy of his story, is finally getting the recognition and protection it deserves. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Washington.
Finally, all too often, artificial intelligence and creative genius appear to be polar opposites, a collision of cultures. But thanks to AI, a long-lost masterpiece by that high Renaissance virtuoso Raphael was identified last January. Now, the painting, which was always thought to be a copy of the great man's work, has been put on public display in Bradford at the Cartwright Hall. By comparing it with this known Raphael original, facial recognition technology has declared the lost masterpiece an original. So after 40 years, the debate is over. Spot the difference. The newly discovered Raphael is on the left. What a lovely image to finish with tonight. That is it from all of us on News at 10. We will see you tomorrow. Good night.
We kick off with more coverage of the FIFA Women's World Cup with Japan v Costa Rica at 10-6. Then Lucy Spraggan joins Christine and Lorraine from 9. We meet twins that married twins and had twins on this morning from 10. And we are back on the pitch as Canada take on the Republic of Ireland in more World Cup action from 12:30.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there, good evening to you. We've got a cool night to come, but with largely clear skies. The exception through northern parts of England. Here we hold on to cloudier skies with showery outbreaks of rain. So heading through into Wednesday, most of us start off dry with some sunshine. We will see a couple of showers, particularly through northern areas of England. And then waiting out in the wings, we've got the next weather system to move in. The cloud will start to build ahead of that rain coming in from the west. That rain will start off light, but it will gradually turn heavy as it starts to push eastwards. Again, the winds starting off light as well, but they'll strengthen through the day, and that rain working its way to all parts gradually as we head through Wednesday. But we are going to see that system clear through quite quickly. Behind it on Thursday, that rain will start to clear with showers pushing in from behind. It's going to be a day of bright spells and showers, but you'll notice quite a muggy feel in the air through Thursday as well. Bye-bye for now.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Good evening, I'm Sangeeta Kandola. Pensioner Errol Dixon, who was punched in the face by a police officer, leaving him with multiple injuries, says he fears he won't live long enough to see justice done. The High Court overturned a decision by the police watchdog, which had ruled the Met police officer had no case to answer. Antoine Allen has this exclusive interview with Errol, and a warning: his report contains pictures of the injuries Errol sustained.
Try to breathe.
Struggling to breathe and suffering from broken bones, this pensioner was hospitalised by a police officer.
Try to breathe.
Mr Dixon has had a 2-year battle with the Met and the IOPC, all whilst the 72-year-old fights a cancer diagnosis.
I wouldn't expect to be beaten up by police, right? Even if they're going to charge me for something, I wasn't expecting to be beaten up by police at my age, because I did nothing wrong.
Mr Dixon, your health conditions mean that the longer this decision process goes on, the greater the likelihood that you may not get to see an outcome. How does that make you feel?
I want to see justice done, some way or the other. And I hope I can survive long enough to see that happen. You know, if at least my family will be satisfied to know that justice has been done, I'll feel satisfied. But, you know, we don't know. I mean, cancer is a thing that you can just take you out at any time at once.
In 2021, Mr Dixon was inflicted with a broken nose, fractured cheekbone and traumatised after being hospitalised during a routine traffic stop by a police officer in Bromley. During the incident, an officer held Mr Dixon by his neck and punched him in the face. The officer claims Mr Dixon struck him in the eye first.
They were dangerous. I thought they were going to kill me that day for a simple traffic stop. I mean, it was crazy.
In 2022, an IOPC investigation concluded the officer acted in self-defence and had no case to answer. This month, the High Court struck down that decision, stating the IOPC misapplied the correct legal test. Sophie, you specialise in cases like this, but it's not the first time the IOPC has had a decision that's been struck down.
Decision makers at the IOPC have formed for making similarly unlawful decisions. Ultimately, what that means is that the supposed independent police watchdog